Hello and welcome to the Southeastern Pennsylvania Symphony Orchestra. I'm Kyle Smith, and on behalf of Music Director Allan R. Scott and the staff and the volunteers and all the musicians of the SPSO, we welcome you to this, our fourth concert in our 49th season. And what an amazing season this has been through all this pandemic. And I don't know if you realize, but I should tell you, how amazing it's been for the SPSO, because we are only one of the few orchestras, not just in this area, but across the country and around the world, one of the few orchestras who's put on an entire concert season. Of course, we're doing it online, we're live streaming it, but also we are doing all this with all the health protocols and following all of those, how many musicians you can fit on stage, and all the shields and all of that. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of work to put all that together and a lot of financial support. And so I'm going to ask two things from you right off the bat. The first thing is stay in touch with the Southeastern Pennsylvania Symphony Orchestra. We're on Facebook. We're at spsorchestra.org. That's our website, spsorchestra.org. And you can stay in touch to find out what our next season is going to be like. And oh boy, won't it be nice to be able to welcome you all back into the room with us and have a live concert together. But in the meantime, we have this great concert for you today that Allan has put together, the 29th Symphony of Mozart and the Clarinet Concerto of Allan Copland. And just a little bit more about those pieces in just a moment, but I want to thank you to say to all the donors who have already supported us. The second thing I'm going to ask you, one is to stay in touch with us. The other thing is, when you're online, it's as easy as can be to support the orchestra through PayPal, spsorchestra.org. If you want to send a check, that's easy too. The SPSO, P.O. Box 694, Lansdale, Pennsylvania, 19446. But either way, consider becoming a sustaining donor or a one-time gift. Whichever way you want to do that will help us not only with the season that we've just had, but looking forward to the music going on into the next season. We also want to thank the great sponsors, the corporate sponsors who have become our partners. Univest Bank, thank you so much for supporting us, and also the Harry L. Willett Foundation, the Doc Mennonite Academy, where we have this beautiful performing arts center where we come to you with these concerts, and also the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to all of those. For those of you in the area, and we know you're watching from around the world and across the country and in the Philadelphia area and its environs, but also right here, Brittany Point, the community at Rock Hill, Leidy's Church community, the Lutheran community at Telford, the Peter Becker community, and the Souderton Mennonite homes. We thank you, all of those, for watching us and being a part of our family. Now, about the music, I wonder if you can remember what you were doing in 12th grade. Can you remember that? Well, for some of us, it's harder to remember that than for others, but for Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, when he was in his version of 12th grade, he was 18 years old and he was writing his 29th symphony, if you can believe that. Well, he ended up writing officially 41, but he started writing symphonies when he was 8 years old, so maybe it's not so surprising, but what an amazing young man, and of course one of our greatest composers. This symphony, however, now you might say, oh, what was on the concert? Oh, it was a Mozart symphony. But this symphony is remarkable not only in Mozart's output, but in the history of the symphony, because this indicates a turning point in the development of the symphony. Now, it had started, the symphony that is, as basically a glorified string quartet. Many times they were simply an overture or an interlude. Think of Handel's Messiah and the pastoral symphony in that. I mean, it's a gorgeous work of genius, but it's basically an interlude within that oratorio. So you have those things going on. A little bit later on, they became multi-movement works, three movements, or in the case of this 29th Symphony, 4 movements, which really became the standard going on. And that is because, in large part, to this 29th Symphony. A few other things that makes this a remarkable piece. One is we talked about the string quartet, and so symphonies are basically string orchestras in the beginning. But little by little, composers started to add other instruments, wind instruments, and that's the case here. There's a pair of oboes and a pair of French horns. Not only that, not they just fill out the sound, but he treats them independently at times so that sometimes they sound like the town band along with the rest of the orchestra. So you have that independence of writing. It's not only with the wind instruments, but it's also with all of the instruments through the strings. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in a way, he's looking backwards to Bach and to the Baroque period where he's writing counterpoint. And what that means is he's writing independent lines for all of the voices. So not only the first violins who get all the great stuff to play, but the second violins, the violas, all have their time to shine, and that is very unusual for that time, and we're talking 1774. So from here on in, Mozart has really started to turn that big ship of what the symphony was to have those independence of lines. Also, before this, you would have one movement would be soft, or one movement would be loud. What Mozart does is he actually juxtaposes those dynamics together in sometimes violent and very dramatic ways. It might not seem like a big thing, but believe me, it is a big thing. All of that is in the Symphony number 29. One final thing is that instead of just multi-movements like you would have in, let's say, a dance suite, you have in this symphony movements referring musically to earlier movements, so that you have the third movement's minuet, the dotted rhythms, da 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 da, are actually echoes from the dotted rhythm of the second movement. And the dropping octaves in the final movement are an echo, actually a very exact echo from the dropped octaves in the first movement. So these are the things that ties this all into one cohesive unit, and that's what we know as a symphony. And it all started right now with this Symphony number 29. So it's not just a Mozart symphony, but a very particular and very special Mozart symphony. At intermission, I'll have the good pleasure to talk to Allan R. Scott. Always fun to see what's behind his thinking with why he chose the certain music and what's behind the music there. And also our great guest, Ricardo Morales, who is playing the Copland Concerto for clarinet. And then we will hear that after intermission. What's an interesting piece, he wrote this, Aaron Copland wrote this for Benny Goodman. That's right, the King of Swing premiered this concerto. He commissioned Aaron Copland. He wasn't only commissioning Copland, but lots of other contemporary composers. Believe it or not, you know, the swing band era was basically 1935 to 1945. Copland wrote this in 47, 48. Benny Goodman premiered it in 1950. Benny Goodman was still busy. He was still playing lots of jazz, but the swing band era had kind of seen its last, heyday. But one thing that Benny Goodman did was he branched out to play classical music. He was playing music by Bela Bartok, Leonard Bernstein, Morton Gould, Paul Hindemith, Francis Poulenc, so many others, and including this Copland concerto. If you don't know this concerto, but you know some of Copland's music, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is going to become one of your favorite Aaron Copland pieces. It's filled with that sensitive longing that is so indicative of Copland's music, but also in the second movement, it's that real jazz and syncopated rhythms that he gets into, that he wrote for Benny Goodman. And oh boy, wait till you hear Ricardo Morales, one of the greatest clarinetists of our time, play this. The musicians are getting ready to play. Once more, I want to ask you to become a sustaining donor for the Southeastern Pennsylvania Symphony Orchestra. Go online to spsorchestra.org. And now we are going to hear the musicians of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Symphony Orchestra play the Mozart Symphony number 29, conducted by Allan R. Scott.